Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today. My name is Hillary Mercer. I'm the Education Manager for the Grant Park Music Festival. So I want to welcome you to our second Visiting Masters Masterclasses. We are so thankful to have wonderful guest artists that come here to perform with the Grant Park Music Festival, and we get to take advantage of that fact and offer a great opportunity for young students in the Chicago area to perform and to learn, and for audiences alike. So we are really, really pleased to have three young students performing for you today. One from the Merit Music School and one from Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. And then our final performer will be our own Project Inclusion Fellow who will be performing so three different pieces. So we will get started. First of all, just a quick welcome to Masumi Per Rostad. In the back looking cool, and he'll be up here wandering the stage as he tells me. So we want to get started right away. Let's welcome Naila Shahid from Merit School of Music.
right, wonderful. How long have you been working on this piece?
About a couple of months.
A few months. Is this your first performance?
Yeah, in front of a crowd, yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, we haven't really had a lot of performances lately, right? Beautiful. There's so much that you're doing so well, so I want to commend you on a beautiful sound. Generally, a very nice form when you play. It's kind of a nice approach to the instrument. I think it's working well for you. I think there are a few things to kind of explore a little bit more. One is the basic kind of attitude of this. What are you thinking in terms of character?
I guess I like to think about it like kind of a person who's really proud of themselves and trying to like share with the world what they're thinking or something like that.
I completely agree with you. Do you feel like you embodied that?
Not really.
It's hard to do, right? It's hard to do, like you walk on stage, and we haven't been performing a lot this last year and a half, right? So, the very first thing that you do when you walk out is, as he's playing, and bum, 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 you should start feeling invigorated. Does that make sense? And it always helps me to think of a point to kind of focus towards.
Okay.
I felt that, it's very easy for this to happen, but I felt that you sort of focused in a little bit. So I think if you, just from the outset, if you just think a little bit more about communicating outwardly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about rhythm and how you consider rhythm. I think this is kind of a pitfall when we learn repertoire, because we have such a clear structure with bar lines and beats per bar and all of that. And we can get a little bit stuck in that. So sometimes I hear you counting as you're playing, right? A little bit of like, gotta get this right, which is different than playing rhythmically, right? A sense of uprightness to your beat, mm-hmm. right? Like you said, kind of energetic and, like you have something to say, right? So let's see if we can make that switch away from counting to feeling rhythmic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And along the lines of what you said, that so much of this is so witty, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so charming and so interesting, right? So the landscape of this, you're going from sometimes vertical gestures, sometimes long horizontal gestures, sometimes small rhythmic figures, right?
Yeah.
Figurations that depart from just basic stepwise motion, right? Mm-hmm. Can you enjoy some of that a little bit more? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try from the beginning once again. And before you even start playing, what are you going to look at? Do you want to look at like a person, or do you want to look at, does that help to look at a person? Sometimes it helps to look at like one person. If it's somebody you trust and you feel safe with, like I can look at you. Or just like, but choose something that you feel comfortable with.
Okay.
I'll go into it, sorry, I'm just going to go on this tangent a little bit further. For me, when I play with piano, I actually like to step this way a little bit. I like to consider, if you're playing like, this is a concerto, right? So I like to consider that my pianist is the conductor, right? So I want a good line of communication. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to totally stand back here, but I also don't want to not see him. Mm-hmm. So I like standing kind of around here, okay. Which kind of helps, right? And like you can see the scroll, and if you feel like things aren't working, you can see hands. Mm-hmm. But a good line of like active dialogue. Let's move you back a little bit and try that. You feeling it? So great. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that first phrase, isn't there?
Yeah.
Right? So you come in, it's, how many bars is the rest before you, is the tutti before you come in? Oh, sorry, I skipped the page. Oh my God, it's like 35 bars or so, right?
It's just, I think it's just these four.
Right, but like the actual full orchestra tutti is like 30-something bars. We've been waiting for you so long. We've been waiting for you. So what is your best sound? Can you play this first chord? Not the pickup, but the downbeat. So maybe think a little bit about warming up the bottom. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, and maybe a little bit of shape to the vibrato. Yeah, let's get that sound. Could we just do like a bar before or something? Great. I wonder if you could build more energy with a little bit more expansion in the bow speed. Right? Just think about getting it to just travel a bit more as you drive through that. So, so you immediately fall, right? You have this big outward gesture. It's very forward. That F sharp. Right? It's such a kind of a heartbeat gesture. This 3-beat anacrusis or 3/8 note anacrusis. So then when you get to that A, can you just play that A? No, just the arrival A. And think about the setup of it. You need to set it up. Yeah. Yeah, so you're just happy to play that A, right? Dee da dee da dee dum. Can you just play that little turn? Yeah. Yeah, a little bit, more of like, hey, take that. And then, what? Wait, but it's the rest that's so important, which you don't entirely do. Which in the rest, think about gathering yourself up a little bit more. Try from the. Good. And now we're in an exercise of appoggiatures, right? Which are kind of stresses and then kind of consonant release. Ti da ba, ya da da di da di da, ti da bum, di da da, ti da di, da da. Oh wait, we don't get another one. Di da da di da. Oops. And then you build a lot of energy. You divert for an extra bar. Right, so you have the final one. So can we start from da yum bum pi? And can you tell a story through the way you treat these appoggiatures? Open up. Great, okay, and this. So in these approaches to the orchestral treaties, think a little bit more about ending your phrase, but also allowing him to continue, right? So let's play the whole opening. Yeah. Look, he's not even playing. You have all the time in the world. Try it. Dee, bum, bum, right? So don't not allow him to continue, right? Bum, bum, bee. Isn't it nice when you have these like really kind of technically challenging bars and nobody's playing? It's actually, you should look at those as not stressful, but liberating. Then you could explore it. You could just, if you felt like you wanted to, but not that you should. But that was interesting. I like that, right? Let's continue a little bit more. You can make a better sound. Can you just try that chord? So that, in general, always think about cushioning the bottom of these chords. Sorry. I'm just tuned differently. Try a nice round roll, kind of a roll rather than Yeah, and think a little bit, it feels a little bit reversed, but put a little bit more weight on the bottom and open up for the top, release the weight for the top, the strings. The more weight you put into the instrument, the more cushion you need. Yeah, try that once again. So it's a gesture. Yeah, and just release the top. You don't actually need very much to spin the top strings. It's more about spin rather than weight, right? So, do you mind just doing a little bit before this entrance, Dana? Yeah, let's do it one more time so you can really just. This room, it has a little bit of reverb, but it's pretty short. Do you hear that? So it doesn't really help you that much, but it helps you a little bit. So how can you make this room sound a little bit better? Can you sort of make this room open up? Does that make sense? Yeah. Every room we go into, we have to play slightly differently for, right? Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a sense of like, you play differently in a small dry room, medium room, big. You can make a small dry room sound like a big resonant hall, right? Yeah. Because you play viola, the best instrument. Sorry. Yeah, and again, one thing that I miss sometimes is that you have such a nice sense of quality of sound from the right arm, but then your left arm doesn't always support that sound. Right? So gesturally, it's, I think sometimes with the vibrato, it's either off or on, but I think it's worth exploring a lot in between. So it's not necessarily such like a, just either or, but more kind of shapes, right? To support. It's like, vibrato's like talking with your hands, like, hey, everybody, hey, oh, right? There's like a support for your gesture. It's an expressive gesture, right? So, it's not, right? So try that once with your hand, even just without the viola. So hold the viola once in the other hand, so it can fall apart.
Yeah,
I hate when that happens. It always, Yeah, try it with your left hand. So talk to them. Right? But bold and energetic and happy, right? Be a hero. That's great, you know? So make a vibrato sound that kind of reflects that gesture, right? Yeah. Will that get put back? Great. So just in the practice room, make sure you continue to experiment with this idea of kind of supporting your sound with the vibrato. Not adding vibrato, but supporting your sound, right? I think it's a slightly different angle of approach versus like, I'm going to work on vibrato, but more about like, I'm going to work on sound, right? And find ways to create a sound. Let's experiment with this because there's an interesting textural landscape going on here, right? Mm-hmm. So we have this. So you come in, you're at the bottom of the instrument. And you have that fun. Isn't that fun to do that? Just do that once. Is that fun?
Yeah.
Show off your bow arm, And yeah, and so that's a hard moment if you're doing the barrelage, but if you do that fingering, it's nice. A little bit of sass on it, because you've had. Oh, I got away with it, right? Yeah. Then going on, bum bum bum, bum bum bum. Remember that? Yeah. Sing, fall, and yeah, and every time you have these little ding, enjoy the fun of doing it, and the same thing, you have this bowing again, right? The duple. So have fun with it. Let us feel like you're having that fun. Good. Can you play this whole second phrase one more time? Yum bum bum pee. Can this be a longer line? Like hold the suspense, because if you start having a vertical rhythm here, you chop the tension, right? There's a way to, how much, you play that E, the first E. Do you love that?
Kind of.
Go, Right, something that just goes right through the middle of the instrument. You let go, hold on to the note. Yeah, the viola will take more than that. Try to sit in the viola a little bit more. Yeah, because you want to sing through the turn. Right, something that's happily in there. Yeah, and one thing about singing, try to sing that. Can you sing the turn?
Like actually?
Yeah, with your voice. One more time. Can you sing it with a little bit more clarity? Now and then phrase it. So you lost the clarity when you phrased it. See if you can get both. Yeah, it's, to find that balance of clarity and phrasing, because sometimes as a string player, as an instrumentalist, it's easy to just go, and just fire out the notes. So I lose some of the exploration in that, right? Like, where are you going to go with this? And where's the heart, right? Yeah. So play this now. Maybe a little lead in of this, yeah. Sing again. And look at those intervals, right? Right? So it's this ascension, which, doesn't that sound familiar from later? Yeah. So great. Let's just do this one more time, and then I think we should stop. And maybe a little close off on that last note. Wonderful. Does this all make sense? Great. to hear you. Have you performed this yet?
No, I have not.
First performance.
Yes.
Great, wonderful. Can I ask you, what did you feel was surprising, and what do you feel went well?
I thought the ending went pretty well for me, except my bow felt a little bit off. It felt a little harder to control than it did in the practice room a little bit. I feel like the parts that I practiced that I would mess up normally, I played pretty well, but some of the unexpected parts, like that I haven't really messed up before, didn't go as well as they normally would.
Yeah, that often happens. There's a little bit of a kind of an adjustment to the space that happens, and there's also kind of like an anticipation that you have to have in the practice room for performance, and knowing that you're probably going to be a little bit more tense on stage than you are in the comfort of your own home, or wherever you've got your instrument out regularly. So what I appreciated very much was your sense of spirit, and I think that you really are exploring this nicely and have a good sense of what you want to do with it. I think we can explore a few tools to make it a little bit more effective.
Okay.
I'm going to guess it was probably a little bit more in tune when you played it at home.
Yes.
Intonation's a funny thing, and it can really mess with your head. The first thing I would say is make sure your instrument's in tune, because I think it's not entirely.
It doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I tuned to nothing, so so I think your A is fine. It's more about your relative. Yeah, try also when you tune, try not being on the surface too much, but rather like kind of a little more. Slow the bow down a little bit more so you can really get to the back of the instrument. Should check that one. Yeah, tuning your instrument carefully just saves so much, aggravation later, and it's something that you should actually practice. This is, I think, not emphasized enough. It wasn't emphasized enough for me in my own education, but you have to tune your instrument really carefully, and you have to know how to be consistent with your tuning. Make sure that your instrument tunes really easily. It's nice you have the tailpiece tuners, because it's an uphill battle, right? If your instrument's not tuned. Also, one thing that typically happens is people walk out on stage. Like I've heard this in so many auditions. Somebody will walk out, and the first thing they do is tune when they're really nervous and they're apologetic, and it's like watching a train wreck, because it's like, oh no, your instrument was in tune. You're just not used to the space, and then you just watch them untune their instrument and be like, oh my gosh, I gotta just play, and then they sort of quit, and then everything's out of tune.
Yeah.
So trust your tuning backstage. If you have to tune on stage, learn how to do it really quickly and efficiently. Okay. So intonation can really get into your head, and it can really kind of play with your perceptions, right? And you can start getting a little twisted. One thing that really helps me in performance is to think not about trying to play in tune, but rather about creating the conditions so that I play better in tune.
Yeah.
So that I can allow myself to play in tune. So what that means is I have to make sure I'm listening, right, objectively. Because sometimes when you start listening, like you've got your head in the instrument and you're like, you're not really listening, like with any kind of objectivity, and it's harder to hear your intonation or get a sense of like, this is where I was the bar before, and like I need to keep a relative, kind of bass note running or something like that. And then the other thing is physically, I try to make sure that my left hand remains loose enough so that it can just follow my instinct. Does that make sense? Rather than trying to get my left hand to do something. sharper, flatter, and the more you fight your left hand, the worse in tune you'll play. Do you know what I mean? It becomes like this cycle. So practice, it's not playing with vibrato, but playing with suppleness. Can we call it that? Okay. So when your fingers come down, that they approach the string with the fingerboard with a kind of a willingness to dissipate the energy, right? Okay. Versus a hard finger. Right? Yeah. So there's a little bit of looseness, and it's not really vibrato. It's not. Not wobbly. It's just a little bit of, like as I'm speaking to you right now, there's vibrato in my voice. Yeah. You know, I'm flesh and blood. I waver. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is vibrato. Right? There's a movement in the hand. Does that make sense? Yeah, that does make sense. And then I feel like then my hand will follow my ear better. Okay, yeah. Yeah? That makes sense. Yeah, so in the practice room, try to anticipate that feeling so that you can then kind of snap into that in performance. Before we start with the beginning, let's go to the end. Okay. Because I like the energy. I don't think you're necessarily doing what I think you think you're doing. So let's play from the first chord arrival. Where is that? Yeah. Okay, so play that chord once again. Don't test it, just play it. Okay, so just consider, this is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, my relationship with my viola. This is a relationship. Yes. It's a relationship like any other relationship you have in your life, with if you have like a sibling or friends or your parents, your teacher, anybody, right? In any relationship, you're not trying to crush your opponent, but rather, like a healthy relationship would be like, I hear you, I think you hear me. There's a dialogue, right? And I also have a vision. I have a vision of my partner here. I've seen you on your best days. I've heard you. I know what you can do. I know it. And together, I think I can encourage you. Like we can be strong together, right? And I can, through encouragement, firm yet gentle, together we can produce a sound and fill this room. Does that make sense? So even the approach of the bow, right? Right, so I'm thinking about trying to connect with the instrument. Yeah. Right? Right, and trying to then pull the sound out of the instrument. Yeah. Try that. And before you go on, just make sure that chord sits out there. How many times have you stopped in this prelude?
What do you mean by stopped?
Have you had any rests yet? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, it's the first.
It's been an onslaught of notes, like right? I mean, it's besides it like an eighth note here and there. I think we've had 2 eighth notes, 3 eighth notes maybe, and there's that chord note in the second bar, right? Mm-hmm. Besides that, it's been perpetual motion. Yeah. This is a pretty eventful moment, right? Yeah. So listen to the sound. Say, hey out there. And then next chord. Okay. Try not hitting the instrument, try coming from the instrument, connect with it. And then just open the bow. 2. try not hitting the instrument. See if you can still bite and grab. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially. Wait. We've been waiting for that forever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because after you've had that incredibly long, you're just sitting on the dominant forever. It's like so nice, right? C major, right? So it's like, it feels so good. Young. So make that chord triumphant, and you know. Yeah. Personally, I still don't love the hitting the instrument thing, because I think you can get much more control. So this is the way I view it. I'm going to kind of go into sort of maybe a long topic, but consider that your bow grip, your wrist and fingers and all of that are like suspension or like landing gear on an aircraft, right? So this is like, if my arm is the aircraft and that's the tarmac, right? As I approach the tarmac, the landing gear comes out and it stays out until it connects and absorbs the impact, right? It doesn't do this. Okay, we descended. All right, here we go. Ooh, right? So you have a lot less control when your hand is compressed, right? So when you're when you hit the string, your hand is essentially compressed. So you don't actually have a lot of control for the inflection. So I want to grab the string somewhere in this gray area in a way that I think is appropriate for the sound, right? And it's Bach, so you don't really need to hit the instrument either. Yeah. There's some pieces where it does make sense to like really whack at the, you know, and that's like part of the dialogue, you know. But in this case, it might be better to try approaching with connection. So don't go so high, get to the string, connect with the instrument, and then you can still bite, you can still grab. And watch, because you did this right before you landed. It's like really awkward, but it's like one of those things. This, like put your bow on the string, right? Just feel in there. Don't move the bow, right? Just feel the levels. We don't do this enough. We don't feel comfortable with this. So if you don't feel entirely comfortable with this, see how your bow just came right off? Yeah. Try keeping it there. See, this should be home. You should just feel good. Okay. You know what I mean? Because this is where you can control your sound. This right here is the mouth. If you're a singer, this is the mouth. This is a, b, k, d, e, f, j, h, e, right? It all happens with this, how you pronounce the beginning, the explosion of the letter. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So try that chord one more time. Yeah, and experiment with it a lot, so that I think in the practice room, because it'll take a long time to kind of. That's a good exercise to do, actually. Try to play the alphabet on one note, right? Like on a a stopped note is better than an open string, and just try to go through the whole alphabet and see if you can pa, ta, right? K, la, and see if it can be somewhat clear. So play these chords and know that the perception of our rhythm is the top, not the bottom, right?
Yeah.
2, 3. Listen. And. Good. I don't think you need to fight so hard. A lot of playing with a lot of energy or a feeling of grandeur is about just sort of spinning the instrument and articulating, right? But you don't need to like, after you've started. Does that make sense? So kind of Yeah, try to see if you can back out slightly. A little. Yeah. Yeah, it might, that's good. It's really nice. I think it would help to practice this with your instrument slightly more stable, because if you tuck your instrument down slightly like you are, which is, I think, even lower than what the bulk of this prelude. Okay. Just at the end, you're really, you're putting a lot of weight on your left hand, and it's hard to negotiate kind of this half position, second position stuff, because you're, it's not free anymore. So if you have a little bit more of a stable platform, think about supporting your posture a little bit more, the upper body just a little bit more open and neutral, and then great, and then try to play around that. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm a little scared of doing that. My shoulder rest has been falling a lot lately, and so when I put it up and it fell earlier.
It sounds like we have to talk about this. It sounds like this has to be a topic today. This is actually like a huge issue for violists. Mm-hmm. This is a real issue that plagues so many of us, is setup. Mm-hmm. Because every viola is completely different, and every violist is completely different, right? So we have all these different sizes, rib heights, curvature of the lower bout, different shoulders, necks, and you won't be able to play the viola well until you feel comfortable. Okay. Because if you're trying to play like this, ow. I think I just got a knot. But if you're trying to play from a really tense standpoint, you're not going to be able to communicate. You're not going to be able to move your body, right? So if anything, you should be aiming for a healthy posture. And you have to know what your most neutral, healthy posture is and how to support that. And then how can you get your setup to fit that? Yeah. Right? So how do you so for me, the first thing is chin rest. The chin rest it's a hard object. It's not soft. It can be soft. You can put stuff on it. But the chin rest has to fit your jawline. It has to make sense. You have to feel around inside your jawline and think of the equal and opposite shape, but not too constricting. Because if it's too if it's it fits, you're not going to be able to move. And you need to be able to move a little bit, right? So you need something that's somewhat moderate. In a way, less is more, but as long as there's enough. Yeah. And then you have to make a shoulder rest or pad or nothing. Ideally, I would play without a shoulder rest. I would love to play without a shoulder rest, but I've got this kind of long neck, and this instrument doesn't have super tall ribs, and the bouts aren't that wide. I've played some instruments in the neighborhood of 17.5 inches that fit perfectly, and you just put nothing on, and it's just that's home, right? But I don't have that viola. I have this viola, and so I had to make it fit. So I put a shoulder rest that kind of fits and supports, with the idea that this, the edge, the back edge, sits on the collarbone as much as possible. And I think it's a good practice for everybody, 2 or 3 weeks a year, to just drop your shoulder rest. When you have no concerts, no impending anything, and you can just mess around, spend 2 weeks minimum without a shoulder rest, and experiment with movement and posture. Okay. So that you kind of learn how to move differently, because it's really easy with a shoulder rest to start getting locked into. Yeah. Right? Into a very kind of rigid structure, and it just forces you to have that conversation annually. But often shoulder rests fall off because we squeeze them a little bit too hard. So you want to make sure that you're not squeezing too hard, and that the instrument is able to rest on a platform. The kind of confusing thing also about setup is that often you're reading or your attention is somewhere not up there, right?
Yeah.
And so when that happens, we start doing this naturally, like you lead with the eyes and you do this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not very supportive for the instrument,
Yeah,
right?
using your wrist.
Yeah, and it just, everything gets compromised. Actually, this is a fun thing to do. If everybody just takes your head and tucks it forward slightly, you can feel, try to move your arms. Don't you feel like that they're a bit rigid? And if you open your head back up, don't your arms feel like they're swinging freely, right? So this little bit of head tuck can have huge implications in your mobility when you're playing the instrument, right? So as you're playing, try to have the discipline to remain open. I actually, when I was in college, they didn't have chairs at Juilliard in the practice rooms. They had boxes, these plywood boxes, which was actually kind of nice. I would put my stand on top of the box so that my music was here. And so I would practice aiming upwards, so that you have a better platform for taking. You want to think that the instrument is coming down, like it's like the ceiling coming down on your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
So think about supporting that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah, and then just make sure you don't squeeze too hard, or that there's nothing funny going on. I think you might need a slightly wider shoulder rest too.
It's actually a violin. One is a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so get a viola rest. Done. I could have just said that, right? I didn't have to say any of that. Just get a viola shoulder rest, we're done. One of the really beautiful moments in this is when you get to the on a viola. Isn't that great? The viola just likes that, right? And that transition down to that, after all the searching and searching, it's so kind of vulnerable in a way. And that starts actually a series of questions, all rhythmic questions and harmonic questions. Is it this? Is this the bar line? You could consider the bowing, the original bowing, which doesn't work. I don't think it's supposed to work.
Is that
Yeah. So you just take that, and then when you get to the top, then you're pounding the dominant on a down bow every time. It's messy. It's wrong, but I think that's the point.
Yeah.
It's 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So I would experiment with trying to see if you can make that work.
Okay.
Before you ditch it.
Okay.
Yeah, and go into the, which is nice too, but somehow for me has a little less of the, it's a little less impassioned.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
beautiful performance. I really appreciate your quality of sound and your sense of color and also expression. I really think that's really working very well for you. Let's talk a little bit about playing with, what is that? Is that a D? That's a D. That's a big piano.
Yeah,
And
I kind of realized that in the middle of the performance that I was playing too.
Yeah, yeah. The type of sound that you're producing was much more for this bubble right here. and it doesn't work as well against an instrument like this. And in general, I always play against full stick.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's ideal, right? Because you hear all the color of the instrument. If there's a balance issue, there's a balance issue, regardless, right? But I think that there's a way to send the color out, the sound, the expression, with just a little bit more, yeah, and a little bit more focus, but with the same idea. Okay. And I think that's worth experimenting with a lot. I felt that one of the culprits that were in this is that I like I see a lot of Susan, his former teacher. I see, we went to school together, but I see a lot of her influence, which I think is wonderful. There's a little bit of an issue in the framing of your bow arm, which makes you disinclined to use about this whole neighborhood, which is actually a significant percentage of your bow. It's not that you don't ever get there, but you're not inclined to use it. Yeah. So I would experiment with, and you do this sometimes, but as you approach the frog, not keeping such a flat wrist on an up bow, but rather sometimes you, which gives you so many more options and makes you not feel like, right? Like you're skidding in, right? So this is just an area to kind of explore, because I had this kind of feeling that, as I was listening to you, that when you got to often the best parts of notes, that there wasn't enough gas there, right? And that you weren't able to explore enough between the notes and kind of the heart of the pitch, of the quality of that length. So, but more the beginnings of sound were much more compelling. So. That's one thing. In general, I would try to explore this dialogue a little bit more. It's a kind of a complicated thing to do. I mean, you don't want to be, the whole time, but at the same time, I come from 17 years of string quartet, where it's like, you try not to miss anything. Yeah. You try not to, and so it's just like, it's also a feeling of like letting somebody know that they can do something, right? Yeah. Like, this is your moment here. Like, do your thing, shine, and so if there isn't kind of a little bit more of an immediately active dialogue, I think that would be, that would just help, even further. So let's start from the beginning. By the way, get a nice mute. A nice mute, because this is like, it's strange because we always get these these tort mutes, these little rubber things.
I had one, but the last time I took it to the shop, they took it off and disappeared.
What did you have?
I had one of those, it was like a $20 mute, the triangle one.
That
just goes up.
The menu and shield.
Yeah.
Right? Those are good. For me, the best sound are the wooden mutes.
Oh, really?
But they're so inconsistent. They sound like wah-wah pedals. Wah, wah, wah. The sound kind of, opens up and closes in a very irregular way, but it has color.
Yeah.
So if you have ever tried a leather mute, those are really nice. They add a sheen to the sound. It actually adds color versus muting. Yeah. So I think, in this case, Bax is asking for color, right? So not necessarily softer, but something different. Yeah. So, good. Let's start from the top. sorry, maybe two little things. One is, there's a kind of a groove to this, right? There's a little bit of a developing lilt, right? It's hesitant. It reminds me of I think, of Britain actually very much, but a kind of a, it's testing, but you're starting to get there. I would start feeling a little bit of that groove, and then try to keep. Then consider. It's not a whisper. It's a stage whisper. A stage whisper. So just something that carries a little bit better. Something that just try to send it, but. By the way, everyone does that fingering. Is that from Lawrence Power's recording?
I don't know. That was just.
It's like, because I've always toiled, and students come in, they're always they always do that same fingering, which I think is great. Maybe the last time.
Just for the ending.
Yeah. But it's so special that to do it twice is a little bit oh, I see you're doing a thing now. Like when you come to it in the end. Yeah. But the end is so special, and this is so. I don't know. Isn't it so sing a D, sing this D, right? Okay, so sing D string D.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
D. Yeah. Just sing let D. Okay. Now sing the same D on the G string.
No. That's interesting.
Da 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 da. That's D string. Where's the G string?
I guess a little closed.
Where? And then C string?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was hard.
D. You go into the throat when successively as you go up into lower strings to higher positions. So da dee dee do. It's a little bit of which maybe is also a little husky for this moment.
Yeah.
It's just again, it comes to taste. But I would consider fingerings in this way. When you do fingering choices, think of your voice and what it does to the voice. Because we have these 4 strings, separated by a fifth. We have 4 fingers, so we have certain considerations. Yeah. So, but just consider that. And if you do it, maybe not a a squeeze, just I think probably more of a similar sound if you do it.
Okay.
That's starting to get to a little bit of a groove, and I think that there's a big difference when you sort of spin your sound out. And it still gives this quiet feeling. But I think one place worth exploring also is when you start really opening up at the last page. Do you have bar numbers? Do you know where that is?
Oh, no. But yeah, we generally know.
Where he's got the, all the sextuplets. It's before the poco largamente, 10 bars or so. And so in that whole section, let's start from the piumoso and see if you can feel like you can expand to the lower half of the bow, and just really, as you build energy, that you're really, incorporating that.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
think about is repetitive strokes. You should try to avoid doing a completely repetitive stroke, but rather, so a little bit of arm back to hand. You know, especially if you ever play in an orchestra, you could break your arm. You know what I mean? Like every muscle is shot. So, you know, just always think of circular bowing in a way. Like it's just always shifting. You know, sometimes you do arms, then you do forearm, a little bit of wrist, back to forearm, arm. Something in between. Yeah. But you're kind of getting into that.
Yeah, it wasn't recommended for that.
Maybe a compound bowing so that you're not always doing the same thing.
Okay.
It's a little hard to control. It's a little wild, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me do what you did. Okay. No, it's so something that feels comfortable, like you've got grab, right? Because it does feel like your bow is about to deflate, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe just, unless you do like a real throw every time, like into a really conscious ricochet.
Just hard to reset.
Yeah, then maybe take it with a grain of salt.
Okay. Sorry, now overthinking it.
Sorry. Yes, I messed you up.
I'm just trying to think about
Yeah. Whatever you end up, do your bowing. But whatever you end up doing, make sure you feel like the arm's moving.
Okay.
Like it's like you've got flow in the arm.
Okay.
So like, I would consider using a lot more bow. You know, yeah. Sorry, where am I? So where's that?
Right here.
Right?
So it's a
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Maybe that even something.
I like that.
Yeah, a little extra. If you do your ricochet bowing, make sure you speak the first note.
Yeah.
Because we need that the rhythm on the first note especially. I think it's because you're thinking
Second, or you're thinking of setting, yeah.
like not stumbling too much, but just throw it in the air a little bit more,
Okay.
a little more percussive. Let's try that one more time. Now phrase. Develop to the frog. More bow. More bow. Yeah, but do you see how you're kind of squaring out a little bit?
Yeah.
It really makes you not want to use so much of this. So I would practice. Actually, can you just do this once? Can you start from here, medium slow, and just watch how you travel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, even slower, like do, do. So you're starting each one always in the same part of the bow. Sorry, I don't know this. Do you know what I mean? Like so you build a line, yeah, and you build a line out of it. And think also between the main beats, da 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 dee da da dee, the grouping, ya da da dee. Shape your bow. D da da. One thing to watch out for it is that the higher you're getting in register, the more squared out you're getting.
Okay.
And I would consider actually opening up and spinning more,
Okay.
but you're applying more, and that encourages kind of bow compression.
Okay.
In this register, it sounds a little bit less energetic, so try releasing and just spinning. Spinning it, yeah. The what?
I've heard that word.
Releasing? Yeah. Yeah, and do practice this actually maintaining a slow tempo, like a slow rubato tempo.
Okay.
And just check out your travel.
Okay.
Because it's like, see, not contact point travel, bow placement travel.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because you're ending up kind of always coming back to the same points.
Yeah.
But I would consider like, this note starts here, this next note starts here, so that you build a phrase.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like coming up with a little bit more of a plan so that it has more variation.
Okay.
Yeah, and that you don't feel stuck into patterns. Yeah, because it's easy to just kind of lock in. So, yeah, does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, no.
And in general, actually, I remember, do you know Norm Fisher?
Oh,
Cellist, yeah. He once said, practice your passages goofy.
Oh.
So like full ham. Like a kind of excessively dramatic and. Sorry, do you like how I'm like sight reading in front of you now? We're that comfortable. But does that make sense? And you just kind of because what it does is it taps into your subconscious. Like, oh, I see this connects to this, and maybe I'm inclined to, swoop here and lead into this, and a little bit less on this, more on that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So as a practice technique. So good. Any questions?
Not really. No.
Great. Bravo. I know we're out of time, so I don't know if
Yeah,
should
if we have some questions, I just wanted to thank Daniel Schlossberg on piano.
Yeah.
Great job, Edwardo. And if you guys have any questions?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions or anything that needs elaboration. Uh-oh. Yeah? This is a Brothers Amati, circa 1619. One of the earliest violas, I guess. There were violas for a while before, but his father invented the violin, Andrea Amati. This viola has an interesting history. It was cut down here. So that's very unusual because usually all the old violas are, they're either the tenor or they're kind of like alto or so, kind of small violas, right? Like 15 and a half inch. This one was originally close to 18 inches. And so they removed material from the middle. It was done about 170 years ago in London. I've got some letters that talk about it. But I actually came into contact with this instrument about 3 blocks from here. This was almost 10 years ago. Just about 10 years ago, I was playing in the old Music in the Loft series that for a while was in the Fine Arts building after Freda Hyman stopped having it in her loft. And then somebody was there in the concert who I knew, and she said, "Are you interested in getting this Amati?" And I was like, "Yes, but no." So anyway, things happened, and yeah, I'm lucky to call it my viola. So.
What strings do you like on it? I don't know, because I don't know. 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 I don't know
I've just been using the same strings nearly for like almost 30 years. I switched. I was using D'Addario Helicores, and I switched to Kaplan's when they came out. But I use D'Addario strings. I like them because I find them very quick and responsive. They're not necessarily the best sounding strings, I'm sure of it, but they do what I need them to do. They move when I want them to move. And certain strings feel slow to me. They get a great sound, but so what? You can't play them. So, and I throw a Larsenet on top. Yeah?
What's your best practice tip when you're feeling kind of like burned out?
Yeah, that happens a lot. Practicing is very important, is very interesting because what you're doing in the practice room is learning about you and how you think and what makes you tick, right? So you have to find out what your patterns are and figure out a good way to confront yourself, right? So it's easy to just go and just do things like prescribed, like must do this. But for me, it's about variability. Like some days, if I just feel, like some days I might just feel really tired, but then I know about like 10, 15 minutes in, I'll sort of activate my brain. But sometimes like 10, 15 minutes in, I'm still like catatonic, right? So then it's like okay to either not practice. Yeah, it's actually okay sometimes not to practice, or to do something different. Just read through different repertoire, or just play something that you know really well and just enjoy playing, like connect with the instrument again, and make sure you're playing well, or just experiment. Just make sounds, and try different ways of doing things, different ways of approaching the instrument, approaching sound. So you have to make sure that you're not wasting time, because that's a very easy thing to do. You go into the practice room and you just do the same thing, and then 10 hours later, you're exhausted, and the next day, repeat, and you learn how to play with your brain shut off, which isn't ideal, right? You should make sure that your brain is present whenever you're playing the instrument. And if you can't handle it, take a step back, breather, do Instagram, go back. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Grant Park Music Festival's Visiting Masters program today. You can find all of our masterclasses online at gpmf.org. We hope to see you again soon.